question has been answered in the connection to the death of 22-year-old Gabby Petito. This after the FBI announced that her fiancé, Brain Laundrie, admitted to killing Petito in a notebook entry he wrote shortly before he took his own life. Federal investigators have now concluded the case, this roughly 4 months after Petito was found strangled to death in Wyoming. The lawyer for the Laundrie family issued a statement after the release of the FBI report saying, quote, Gabby and Brain are no longer with their families, and this tragedy has caused enormous emotional pain and suffering to all who loved either or both of them. He then went on to say, quote, we can only hope that with today's closure of the case, each family can begin to heal and move forward and find peace and with the memories of their children. May Gabby and Brain both rest in peace. Joining me now to weigh in, attorney at the Bianchi Law Group, David Bruno. David, thank you so much for joining me. David, again, this is such a tragic case. We've been following it since the beginning. This was an interesting twist that the FBI found this notebook where apparently Brain Laundrie admitted that he had killed his own fiance.
Yeah, what a tragedy. Like you said, Stephanie, I mean, two young individuals are gone. One by murder and the other by suicide. And my heart goes out to both families. I mean, look, this is a tremendous situation to deal with as a family member. And look, it's closure. I mean, just on Friday, they're closing this case. And look, we're never going to really know everything that the FBI and the local agencies derived from this investigation. Because it was national, we were getting bits and pieces from various different press conferences and leaks and things like that. In the end, we're really not going to know everything. But I think because of the attention that this case got and the amount of different agencies, including federal and local authorities on this case, just looking at it right now, I think I could be very comfortable that they saw everything. They went into every phone. Look, Brian's family's home was searched by the FBI. And a lot of discussion, at least before, was about what was the involvement of the parents. Did they tell the truth? Were they a participant? Did they help in any way? And I think by closing this, the FBI is fairly confident that Brain was the only individual responsible for the death and that there are no other individuals that should be criminally responsible. And it really is an exoneration of the parents in light of the case closeout.
Yeah, and then just to be clear here, the parents of Brain Laundrie will not face any charges so far. This is according to reports. But some are questioning whether there could still be any sort of potential legal consequences. Some were critical of how the Laundrie family handled all of this at the beginning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, they invoked. So they went through a lawyer, at least very, very initially, and law enforcement had to deal with the attorney. And look, it's every individual's right. It's a constitutional right to remain silent. It's the Fifth Amendment. And it's one of the most fundamental rights out there for any individual, be it somebody that is responsible for the crime, somebody knows information. As long as they didn't lie, as long as they didn't participate, then I believe that the FBI, the United States Attorney's Office, and the local authorities are making the right decision to close the case. But again, we're never going to know exactly what they had. But given the fact that they went into that home, I would imagine they went through every single phone. They used every single carrier with subpoenas and court orders, et cetera. Because of the attention that was on this case, I find that it was a thorough investigation, excluding these parents as criminally liable.
Yeah, I'm sure you remember the video, and we've been playing it, of the body cam footage from the officers who originally handled the dispute between the two while they were on their trip. Now, according to CNN, independent investigators recommending that the Utah officers who stopped Gabby Petito and Brain Laundrie be placed on probation. How do you think that the officers handled that situation? Obviously, there's two sides to the story. And, you know, if you look at more of the details, they had put them in separate hotel rooms and offered all of that. So some are wondering, number one, should they be on probation? Or number two, a learning lesson for law enforcement or just others when there's red flags like this in the future?
Yeah, you're referencing a report, an internal report that looked at what the police officers did on that stop. And this recommendation of probation, ironically, is not because they did something to Brain Laundrie. In fact, the recommendation is there because in that state, much like my state here in New Jersey, there is a particular statute that requires arrest for domestic violence offenses. Now here, these police officers, when they got to the scene and they identified a domestic violence incident, and they heard that the female actually admitted that she was the one that first struck Brian, the criticism of those police officers is that they didn't arrest her. Believe it or not. Now, after the fact, in hindsight's 2020, we now know that there is probably a cycle of domestic violence and much more to what the police officers immediately identified on that roadside stop. But because of the mandatory arrest requirement in that state, much like New Jersey, those police officers were required to arrest Gabby, believe it or not, just based on the admission and identifying who's the first aggressor from the information that they had. And we know that from the body cams. Look, in the end, this is domestic violence. This is a very, very concerning issue for Gabby. And look, victims of domestic violence may not always look like victims of domestic violence. I think that's the other takeaway that we could have from this case. It's not always what the police officers see immediately and gain knowledge of immediately. There may be a victim there that was the first aggressor, and that's what I believe should be the biggest takeaway from this case nationally. How could we train officers? How could we train victims? And how can we do a better job in the domestic violence context to help those in need?
Yeah, definitely so many learning moments. Well, David, we're out of time. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure, Steph. Have a great day.
Thank you.